All right, it's 10:07 and we have lucky number 23 participants. So, um, welcome everybody. Do we have an agenda slide, Amanda? Awesome. We'll start right here with our agenda. I think you've all had a chance to see it. Um, so I won't go over everything specifically. We'll just turn the time over to Nate to make sure she gets plenty of time to share her portion with us. And I think if you have any questions or concerns, there's always the chat, but also feel free to unmute and interrupt whenever you need to. We're a pretty laid back group. And Nate, go ahead.
Okay, well, we wanted to welcome everybody today. So if you could go to the next slide, Amanda. Perfect. We're going to hear from a lot of our team throughout the day. And I think most of you are familiar with most of the folks on our team. So I'm going to let them kind of introduce themselves or say hello when it's their chance to present. But we do have a new team member that we've added since our last meeting all together, and that's Heidi Pitkin, and she is our new support staff. So we've had some changes over the last year, and here she is waving hello. She said she's had quite the Monday, which we can probably all empathize with. We were joking this morning that when we planned this date, we didn't realize it was daylight savings time. So just makes Monday even better. But at least it's at 10 instead of at 9. That's what we told ourselves. So we're really excited to be working with Heidi, and she joined us right after Christmas break. So, well, like 3 days after Christmas, but we're really happy to have found her, and she's supporting our team. So if you haven't seen her on an email or heard from her, you will at some point in the future. We wanted to thank you for coming today. We're excited to just get to kick things off for spring. And my role this morning is to let you know of some strategic planning that we're working on, but I wanted to connect it to kind of our larger USBE strategic planning, which maybe some of you have had the chance to hear about or be familiar with, but I know we all kind of come at this from different angles. So I want to just give a little bit of background on that. So Amanda, if you could jump to the next slide. So I don't know if you guys have ever felt this way. I have felt this way, particularly sometimes when I've taken a new position or gotten a new job somewhere, and the boss has expectations for you and things that he'd like you to do, but you feel like there's not a lot of guidance about how you're going to accomplish that. So what we're trying to do with some of our planning is to make sure that for all of us working together as a larger team in the state to serve our youth in custody and our youth in care, that none of us feel this way. It is a really important job, and we want to do the best we can for our youth. And this is one way that we're going to attempt to do that. So next slide. I'll give you a minute to read this one. So I think my dad loves Dilbert Comics because he's worked in the same office for 30 something years. And I feel like he's had several managers he feels like are like Dilbert's boss. But the reason why I picked this one is because I do think sometimes it feels like there's a hidden plan or a hidden expectation that we don't know about. And that's what we don't want to have happen here. So just a little humor. I joked with everybody before you all joined us this morning. Nick is the one who usually brings the humor and jokes to meetings, and I'm not very good at that. So I had to pull in some comics to do that. So next slide. So I like this quote. It says, "The real path to greatness, it turns out, requires simplicity and diligence. It requires clarity, not instant illumination. It demands each of us to focus on what is vital and to eliminate all of the extraneous distractions." And I think as we've been engaging in this work, and we're going to continue for the next month and a half, spending some time to intentionally strategic plan does help you kind of weed out what's important, what's going to help our youth be successful, what's going to help us be successful, work together better. And I really like the point it makes about clarity, and that comes not instantly. And so what we're hoping to do is kind of give you a little background of where we're at right now and how you fit into the picture, which all of you will at some point. So next slide, Amanda. But what I wanted to ground you in, and as I said a few minutes ago, the USBE has been doing some strategic planning for the last few years. And I'm not going to get super into it, but I wanted to do just some high levels so you can see how we hope to connect to what we're doing as an agency. I think that several years ago, leadership felt that it would be very important to have something to guide our efforts all together and also help out in the community with stakeholders. They said it's been super helpful when working with legislators or folks who want to partner with our agency because they can kind of get a sense of where we're going. And so all of this I pulled from our latest update, and I'm going to pop a link into the chat box after my part is finished so that you could access this if you wanted to, but it's a little bit of a longer document. So I just pulled some key pieces so you can get an idea of where we're at. But you can see that they kind of define these different steps of our strategic plan, and it starts with the vision, which is what we aspire to do, a mission, which describes what we do at the USBE and how we do it, and then these goals, strategies, and metrics. So next slide, Amanda. So in terms of vision, our identified vision is upon completion, all Utah students are prepared to succeed and lead by having the knowledge and skills to learn, engage civically, and lead meaningful lives. And I think over the last year, especially as we've been working together as a newly formed team with a lot of us kind of new to working together in this way, we very much see this vision for our youth in custody. And a connected piece to our strategic plan at the agency is this portrait of a graduate. And so I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, but I wanted to just pull a couple things from that so you can get a sense of that companion document to our strategic plan. So next slide, Amanda, please. So the portrait of a graduate is divided into three kind of segments, one on mastery, one on purpose, and one on autonomy. And I think if you look at sometimes it feels like when we're looking at data or we're looking at how we define success for our students, it has very much in the past been focused on academic mastery because that's something we can quantify. That's something we see as traditionally the role of education in the state. But as you all know, you're doing this work. Education covers so many things, especially as our students are in the secondary level. And so what the agency has done is kind of determine these different competencies that should be guiding our work. And in our team, we've had conversations about how we feel like this is very important for the population that we work with, because although we want our students to achieve academic mastery, we know that they face a lot of systemic barriers from transferring a lot, being credit deficient, having lost records, some of these different challenges, not to mention some challenges they've just had outside of their school life. And so we really appreciate this competencies piece because it looks broader at the whole student, and I think can really touch on some things that our students may have strengths in and help us kind of have that more holistic view of what we're hoping our students to develop and achieve when they leave us. Next slide. Stuck. Okay. And I think this kind of goes to this piece, this comes out of the plan that just, I think in the past, it's been easy to focus on that quantifiable thing. But I think we are kind of working toward those portrait of a graduate characteristics too, because those are very valuable in terms of supporting our students. So next slide, Amanda. So in terms of the mission we've identified in terms of what we do, we lead by creating equitable conditions for student success, advocating for necessary resources, developing policy, and providing effective oversight and support. And for those of you who have been catching any bit of our USBE board meetings on a monthly basis, this focus on equity has been discussed pretty heavily, especially in our standards and assessments committee, and as well as in the full board. And so, especially if you have thoughts or ideas, I think it's a really important time to tune into that conversation. We have new board members. We have board members who have differing opinions about things, and I think it's very helpful for them to hear from the field, particularly in terms of of things they're reviewing right now and working on. But that is our identified mission is this idea. And so in terms of what we have with the resources we do, we want to develop policies and programming that supports you. In terms of measurement, you can see we have the portrait of the graduate is kind of that aspirational goal, but we have these goals that we are working on to get there, as well as metrics that we use to define some of the success of our students. So next slide, Amanda. I think we're going backwards. Perfect. Okay, so these are kind of our goal strategy areas. And what I'd encourage you to do is kind of look at these. I think early learning is a little less connected in a way. That said, what we know is the efforts and the work that we do with our young students can have a lasting impact, and things that happen when our students were young with youth in custody have had impacts. But we are divided throughout the agency. Many of us are working to develop strategies and plans connected to personalized teaching and learning, effective educators, leaders, safe and healthy schools, and that early learning. So if you ask Nick, he's been working on a team the last 1.5 to 2 years, I think, where folks, and part of it is designed to get us working together throughout the agency so that we're not so siloed, since we all have these common goals. Next slide, Amanda. And I think this takes us to youth in custody strategic planning. So as some of you may know, I became a coordinator about 1.5 years, a little over that, and was able to now work with youth in custody while Brian Olmsted kind of moved into a different segment of adult education and prevention work. And so as we've been doing that work, we've had some folks retire, we've had some folks join us, and our director, the assistant superintendent of student support, Dr. Leah Voorhees, felt like now might be a really great time for us to engage in some strategic planning and try to develop something for the next 5 years to guide our work at the state in terms of youth in custody. And so we worked to identify an outside facilitator to kind of help us do this work, to make sure that we did it in a timely way, that we were held accountable, and to help us wrangle all the different pieces that go with just deep strategic planning. And so this is these are the activities that we've been engaging in. And we just, again, wanted to give you kind of this higher level view. We began the work in January, and we plan on having the plan complete by the end of April. And so these are some of the pieces and the activities that we're working on. What I wanted to point out is that some of you will participate in a little bit more of an active way, but we've identified all of you to give us some feedback at different points, particularly in terms of the external assessment. And so that may be through some surveys that come out, that may be through some invitations to participate in a meeting or a discussion. But we understand a key part of this is hearing from you and understanding what your concerns are and what your thoughts are of how at the state we can support you in the work that you're doing. And so we just want to let you know that this is going on kind of in the background, but you'll be hearing more in the near future. We're working with OnLarge, which is a company that's based in kind of the DC metro area, but actually has a lot of contractors who are local here. Some of them worked at the agency or have worked with, kind of touched on youth and custody things in the past. Next slide, Amanda. So right now we've kind of gotten through our internal assessment, which involved some work with just internally us identifying some of our goals for the plan that we hope to come out with. And you may recognize the first bullet because I think it's something that Nick and Steve have tried to focus on over the last few years in terms of increasing quality, equity, and accountability. Nick has long identified that we need some additional clarity and support within our office in terms of fiscal management and processes. So we're going to be working more closely with our fiscal colleagues to kind of support him and build more clarity into that process. We'd like to identify ways to have increased collaboration with internal and external stakeholders. Data literacy is another big piece. We understand that we have lots of data that we're not always using effectively or know how to use effectively, and so some plans around that. Further supporting the internal and external passion for education that we hold. And that leads to kind of our next one is just activation of support and ownership. I think even at our state level, as I haven't heard directly from many of you, but Nick and Julia report that, and Amanda reports too, that sometimes it can feel very isolated to work in the programs that you do. You're not always connected to everyone else within your district. And we want to kind of identify ways that we can better pull in people at our level and also maybe model or support you in doing that at the local level, because together we're stronger, getting everybody working on that same common goal of supporting our youth. So we just want to kind of let you know where we're at. That's where we're at. We'll have something more defined and something shareable within the next month and a half. But next slide, Amanda. So I definitely know, there's a balance. We wanted to do this work over the course of a few months, but we didn't want to spend all year or all the time. So we are doing some deep work right now so we can get on with things and get out there. And next slide. And I think some of the reason why we share this with you is so that you know what we're working on and that it is not something we plan to stick in a drawer. It's not something that we plan to say, oh, we have it, but we don't really do anything with it, which I feel like sometimes places I've worked for have mission statements and things, and that's how it turned out. Similar to what we see at our agency level, the strategic direction is something that is referred to often, that we are all pretty familiar with in terms of how our work connects to that. And we hope to have, something on not quite that large scale, but something that definitely connects to our agency's work, but that connects all of us. And so I just wanted to thank you in advance for your support, for feedback that you give when asked, or you can even give it if we haven't asked you. If some ideas have come to mind as I've been sharing with you, things that you think might be helpful for us to consider or know. We really value your opinion. And I think one of the cool things about this group is we are a smaller group, and you're very passionate and you're very knowledgeable. And I know that Nick and Julia and Amanda, they all really appreciate and rely on that. Murray, I think, is on the call today too. And similarly, I know he values your feedback and sees you as just fantastic partners. So at the end of the day, I want to thank you. I'm often in the background, but I hear about the good work you're doing. And I know that it's challenging. I know that it's tough, but I know that it's super valuable. And I really care about our youth in custody. I worked with them in prior professional career, and I just really value what you do and want you to know that you're appreciated, particularly this year when we've had some really big challenges. So thanks for the work you do. I'll kind of be in the background throughout the rest of the meeting, but we're kicking the meeting off. So we can't, is it Julia next? Okay.
It is Julia next. All right. Thanks, Nate. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of your help in the strategic planning already. I know we've reached out to you. We've sent you some emails. You've already done some surveys for us. And so it's a great opportunity for me to get to know you better. And I have been here since June. We met at the directors meeting in the fall. And here we get to meet again for me to tell you all about the current YIC issues, because I know all of them. I think our agenda is a little deceiving. You might think today that I'm going to tell you about all of the issues that you're facing, but surprise, I'm not. I'm going to let you talk about those. But I did have a photo here, or a cartoon that I wanted to let you see. It says "Back to School Sale." When Nick saw this, he's like, "Is the problem the game Among Us, or is it something to do with unicorns?" I don't know. Anyway, this was my attempt at finding something to introduce this topic to you that is not offensive. It might be. The game Among Us might be offensive to you. I don't know. Sometimes I get offended playing that game with my children. And now, I don't know how many of you do this, but we play Among Us live, where we actually get to walk around the house and kill each other. And that's been a lot of fun. So if the game Among Us is a problem for you and that's been an issue, by all means, I'm going to encourage you to have conversations about that. But I know that 2020 has been a really fun year. It's been pretty normal, pretty straightforward, to say the least. And maybe this year we don't have to go back to school in hazmat suits, right? That we'll all be immunized and things are going to be perfect come fall 2021. So there you go. There's your cartoon. But what I want to do is what Nick and Amanda and Nate and I talked about as we were preparing for this is that we wanted an opportunity to hear from you. And we wanted to do that with a little bit of some guided conversations. And so while I'm talking, Amanda is doing her magic. You need to know that Amanda is the juggler of all things Zoom. She's progressing slides. She's splitting you into groups. She's preparing herself to present after this discussion that we're going to have. And so I just wanted to say I'm appreciative of Amanda, but I'm taking a little bit of extra time so she can do that. But we're splitting you into groups, and I want you to ask yourselves while we're sitting here 2 questions. One, what are the issues and challenges that you have faced this year? Because I would imagine that it's not just a Corona issue, but that there's a myriad of things that have come from that. In addition to some things, right? We've dealt with JJS reform in the last couple of years, and we're seeing some numbers decline. And that might have presented some issues and some challenges for you this year. And so I want you to think, what have you faced this year and how have you found solutions to these problems? And, or if you haven't, we want to know that too, so that as we come back together in our groups, we can identify some of these issues, and maybe you can learn from each other what you're doing, what others are doing, and help each other in a positive way. So think about those two things. What issues and challenges have I encountered this year, and what solutions have I been able to find, if any? So as you're thinking about that, Amanda's going to split you into groups, and then I want you to answer those questions together. So please identify in your group a spokesperson, and that spokesperson take some notes while you guys chat, and then when we come back together, I'll ask that spokesperson to speak for your group. All right, are we back then? We're back. I can see all of your faces and names. Okay, perfect. I hope that was a good exercise. It was an opportunity for you to network a little bit with each other, which is part of the goal as well, and to talk about things that maybe you're all facing similarly, and maybe unique things to your area that others could help with. So what I'm going to attempt to do now, this will be my first time, but I thought it would make it a little bit more interactive, is I have a Jamboard ready to go. So Amanda, if you will stop sharing, and then I will share my screen. We're going to use this Jamboard to have you present on your various topics. So one thing that we talked about in the group that I was in, that Murray brought up, actually one of the challenges that we face is creating and defining clarity of what the roles are among the various agencies. And one of the solutions that has come up this year is that the ETCAs have done a really good job of collaborating with JJS and becoming part of their meetings where they're talking about students individually and the progress of them. And so we have people to the table from all agencies having the same conversations, and that has been a really positive thing. And Murray, if you want to clarify that any more quickly, then you're welcome to.
No, I think you've done a good job. One of the other things that inside of that has occurred is having our ETCAs, which for many of you who don't know that, ETCAs, we'll have that discussion here at 10, whatever it is, 11:30, with the role of the ETCA. Is that ETCAs there are education transition career advocates, and they're found primarily in secure sites and at some of the RTCs, and they service ALTA and DSI as well. So if you have detention kids, they're not going to be servicing those kids. But one of the things that one of the biggest blockbuster moves this year, we've had some really significant moves with JGS. JGS has been this year more willing than in decades past, and that is to let us have access to their information. So one of the things that we've been having access to is we're going to be having access to their CARE, which is CARE. Well, there you go, right there. That's their data system where we're going to be seeing the data inside of there, and may even have some publishing rights. So think about that. It'd be like having somebody outside of our system publishing things in our UTREX or educational system or into your district records. That's a huge deal. The second thing is that the ETCAs are also going to be the case managers and so forth are going to be receiving information from our ETCAs as to which students they're working with and who's leaving and so forth, and what the situations are. And we're going to be sharing information back and forth in that area. In fact, Evian, if you want to speak just for a second about that, give a 30-second soundbite on that would be awesome. Evian, are you there? She was.
Oh, looks like she's in the waiting room. I'll admit her. Okay, and I know that you guys have a little bit of time later, but I don't know if you'll be.
Yeah, we'll pick that up there. I'll ask. We're planning on discussing that too much, but I think that'll be something we'll pick up and discuss.
Okay, I think that's great. Why don't we then go to the rest of you? So if someone will just chime in, I'm not sure who was in what groups, but if I could get you all, someone to volunteer.
I'll volunteer. This is Jason over in. So we just talked about one of the biggest challenges, and it really depends on the particular site or program that's covered by YIC. Attendance has been really difficult, but I think just to sum it up, with our agency partners, to maybe piggyback on what's been said, is just a willingness to be flexible and to adapt. there's been a lot of staffing issues, facility staff issues, which have been unpreventable with COVID, with people leaving leaving employment there, and they've just been very flexible to work with us and try and find some reasonable solutions. But the biggest challenge I think that I know we're facing is we are trying to move forward with reform and for all the right reasons, but I still share concern, and people probably tired of me saying this and hearing this, but it's a matter of what we will be supported by their staffing and their facilities. It's hard to mobilize all the resources and then not have things in place. And so there's a common discussion point is don't worry about that. We'll take care of it. But it doesn't always feel like it's the case. And it's not from an unwillingness, it's just not knowing what to do. And so that's been a little bit of the challenge. I don't know if I presented that much in a solution other than there's a lot of active conversation going on and trying to figure it out, because ultimately what we all want is for kids to be successful and to try and really try and drive down things that will be beneficial to them and not just be a series of check boxes, but something that will be translatable into a vocational profession or a new direction in their life.
And I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. I have a 6-year-old that doesn't understand when the door is closed. He's not allowed to come in. So I apologize, Jason, if I was a little distracted.
Oh, that's all right. I didn't even know.
Okay. Yeah, my hand was up.
So
Anyway, just sum up maybe that solution for me as far as like just kind of coming to, I know you were talking about just that moving kids into those vocational settings and having a little bit of conflict there. I'm sorry, just for our board, I wouldn't mind just a couple words.
So what the challenge was is
no,
is that what you're saying? I think, I'm sorry, I didn't repeat it one more time.
Just the solution to that. You said, so I think the solution would be, and then I was distracted. I apologize.
It was that last sticky note, willingness to be flexible and adapt, I think, and just continue. I guess one thing you can say is having ongoing conversations. I would repeat what Murray said is more than times past, I think we're really trying to put our heads together and figure out what those solutions could look like versus finding out about something 2 weeks later and trying to adjust.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sorry, I was muted. This is Wendy. So I just started off talking about Salt Lake being the only district in the state that was remote most of the year until now. And that's just brought a lot of really interesting challenges. And I didn't want to, I didn't know if anybody else was experiencing some of the specific challenges we have. And in my group, we had, Nebo, which has Landmark, which is pretty big high school, down to then we also had in our group people that are doing residential. And it seems like the residentials have been doing pretty well, managing kind of as normal. And then we've all, and Nebo's seem to have some successes and challenges. I think we could all agree that staffing issues have been hard this year. And I think this year's challenges is really related to COVID. A lot of them, like I've never seen, and it's like, and I like that Jason brought up willingness to be flexible and adapt, because it's to technology, it's so much. I could go on forever and I don't know if that's important. So I just start every day like, oh, expect the unexpected. And if no minor crisis happens, then it's a good day. So it's constantly adapting and being flexible that way. And I think we were in our group, we were all in agreement that the kids do much better with direct instruction than how they've been struggling with remote. And like with Salt Lake situation, we've tried to bring our YIC and our, self-contained classroom in for small groups, and then various ways of that, which that connection seems to have worked better for them. And now we're having them in 4 days a week for full days. So that's really made a difference. And then the residential, like we've been able to do 4 days a week there all year. So, and we've been a combination of Zooms and everything else like we all have. So I think we're all in agreement with that. And another trend I've seen in my area, and some of the rest of you might, there's just in the Salt Lake area, there's been a lot of staffing changes with case managers and things in JJS. So there's been, so that's kind of been a challenge. I've had my own staffing issues. So I think this pandemic has just maybe caused staffing issues in a lot of areas for all of us.
It has. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing so far, is that maybe across the board staffing issues have been a problem. And I guess that is something that I was not really aware of. So thanks for sharing. Is there anyone else that has anything additional that they would like to add?
Oh, I just wanted to add one more thing that we see as a trend. Number, and I don't know if it's specific to district or whatever, but the numbers are way down this year.
Yeah.
And we saw that, and Andy sees that too. And I've seen that in Salt Lake. And so I was interested to know if that's everywhere or just because people didn't like what Salt Lake District was doing. There's multiple questions. So I think that's an issue. And that was all I was going to say.
And I would say that is across the board. The numbers are down this year. I think, yeah, and Nick can speak to a little bit later as far as looking at the numbers and funding, but it is across the board that numbers are low. And JJS, we've talked to them about this, and I think the responses that we're getting is we have to not look at those numbers this year because it is unique to COVID. Anyway, so we'll see how things change coming up.
Julia,
Anyway, yes, please.
I have a couple questions for Wendy, if I may.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Wendy Murray, I'll turn my camera on so you can see something besides the Great Salt Lake. The quick question, two questions I have for you are these. Have you been able to measure any losses in academic gains as a result of non-indirect instruction? So in other words, what we've been going through for the last year, do you think kids have lost ground academically? Let's not talk about any other variable. Let's just talk about one variable, the academic gains or losses. Have they gained at the same space, or has their rate of progression actually diminished as a result of non-direct instruction?
I don't know if I could give you my opinion, but we're, doing some testing right now, and we're, and our YIC kids have so many challenges anyway, because they come with a lot of gaps.
Yes, I know that, but I'm just want to know if, or for anybody else. I mean, is anyone else, OD, have you or anyone else noticed, well, OD, you do it with more RTCs, but have you noticed anything? Well, no, never mind. Have you noticed has anyone else noticed any difference as a result of the lack of direct instruction as opposed to what we've been doing to survive the COVID period? Okay.
I'm wondering too, we're going to have some time at the end of the day. And so maybe think about that as we go. And then Murray, if you're still going to be here at 2 o'clock when we're wrapping up, we can ask that question again.
Okay. The other one I have is, Wendy, with regards to staffing changes, you're talking about JGS staffing changes. I'm assuming that's JGS and not academic education staff changes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what is your challenge? Is it the lack of relationships that are critical to making things work, or is it not knowing who they are and what the phone numbers are or whatever? Where is the challenge?
Well, I think that they've had in my region or Salt Lake, they've had a lot of turnover. Like I had one kid that's had 3 different case managers this year, and so it is a relationship issue then. I don't know what's going on with JC.
Well, but that's a given. But I'm just saying, in terms of defining the problem. It's difficult to prescribe or work on a solution specific to the problem. So if it's an issue of you not knowing who they are, that's an easy academic result of a response. But if it's an issue of relationships and lack of relationships or changing relationships, and the kids feel like they're on a, they're on a spinning wheel and they don't know who to work with, and they don't have that level of trust, that's a big issue. And that's a whole different conversation than finding out who the person is, which is, an administrative factor. So which is of the two issues, which is the bigger, the not knowing who they are, or is it the fact that they're on the kids feel like they're on the spinning wheel of not knowing who they're really working with, and therefore the level of trust is diminished because they, now there's somebody new. They got to get to know this person all over again and develop a relationship. And, these types of things take time to work. Any thoughts, Wendy?
Well, I can only speak specifically for the small group of kids that I've worked with. Angie Shaw's on my LEA, and she just recently joined because that's kind of switched, and she gave me an update of all the caseworkers and some of the changes that have gone on. She's gonna get me on one of their monthly staff meetings so I can remind them how we do business. So I think I know how to do a flow of information. I think for the kids' sake and the ones that I know, it's been hard because all of our, especially some of our JJS and DCFS kids have such trust issues anyway. So I think having different people then, I think sometimes that is a hindrance, and I don't know what the solution is because.
Okay, so Wendy, so I'm going to summarize it in my observation, and it's more of a relationships issue as a result of quick turnovers. Thank you.
Okay.
It is 11:05, and so we are behind on our agenda. Is there any additional things anybody wants to bring up? And if there are things that you want to continue to talk about at the end of the day, we can bring those up then too, if you'd like to have a more robust conversation with the larger group. So if there's any last minute thoughts before we move on. I apologize for the time constraints. Well, I hope at least in your small groups today, you were able to have some good conversations and hear some solutions from each other. And please, by all means, reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns, and we can try to connect you with each other as you've all continued to be flexible and adapt as this year has progressed. So thanks for your time right now. And I am going to turn the time over to Amanda.
Thank you, Julia. Okay.
I'm going to stop sharing.
I was going to say we got to do the share swap, so bear with us for a minute while we do that.
Maybe stand up and stretch while we do that.
Yeah.
Stop sharing.
Stretch breaks are always nice. Okay. Are we seeing the PowerPoint, Julia?
Yes, I see.
All right, so I get to talk to you for a little bit about, specifically about the survey I sent out to the directors recently about Check and Connect. And then if Nick is in travel, we will watch his video, and if not, he will talk with us as well. So one of the questions I asked was, how are new mentors trained? And we got a variety of responses. The majority are using experienced mentors to train the new mentor. We have a couple districts that the district director trains them. And I'm going to go ahead and guess Steve's one of those, since he's one of our certified trainers. He's not here today to defend himself, though. And then we have a handful that are specifically coming to me and the state training, which is ideally what we would want all new mentors to be doing. So with new mentor training, all new mentors should participate in the initial training at least once. The initial training talks about the theory behind the model and takes time to dive into the implementation with Fidelity Manual, which is what the mentors use on what I would assume a daily basis with the students they meet with. So at least once is best practice. And we realize that that training is not always available. when COVID first hit, I had hopes of putting the training into Canvas, but that didn't work out for us because you can download anything put into Canvas, and that doesn't work with the contracting that we have in place with Check and Connect National. So what we've done at this point is I just have a waiting list when folks are hired, and then we put together a training and get them trained. But like the slide says, sometimes the trainings aren't available. So in that case, I'm wondering, like, well, I know specifically that Alpine has a document that they use to introduce their new mentors. So I'm wondering if there's other districts that have a specific, I'm going to call it a quick start to mentoring, or a specific process that they kind of walk their new mentors through when they can't get them into one of my trainings. And you're welcome to come off mute and share with us. And I'm really asking this because I would like to see what you have. So Nicole with Alpine has already shared the document with me, and we're gonna cross compare and make sure what I have come up with and what Alpine's already using is matching. I spent some time in the last year creating a Utah Mentor Best Practices document. And we're starting to round the corner toward the finish, toward home plate. I think we're on third base now. We're almost there. We're ready to have it edited and have graphics added to it. But it doesn't look like anybody else is coming off mute. So if you have a document that you're using with your new mentors as they're coming in, I would love to see that, just to compare with what we're going to submit, or excuse me, share out to all the mentors as the best practices. All right, so, and one of the reasons we want all new mentors to go through the initial training is we're curious if experienced mentors are training, or excuse me, using the model to fidelity, or if we're perpetuating some bad habits by having our experienced mentors train the, I'm gonna call them new kids. We just wanna make sure that all new mentors have the opportunity to understand the model and the expectations of the role of the mentor. Now, I also want to honor what experienced mentors bring to the table, because without their help, problem solving would be a lot harder. I use a lot of their examples when we're doing the training. Okay, next, let's see. So again, best practice would be to go through the training at least once. And I've also developed a quick guide, which actually I'm ready to submit to Nate for her approval now to get shared out. And it's just a 2-pager. It'll be a quick way for folks to get started in mentoring until they can get through the training. And then in addition to that, we would want directors to be working with their mentors to have access to whatever student information systems they're going to need to access the attendance records, behavior records, and grades. And that varies district by district, what access they're going to need. So that's something we want you to work on right up front to get them access. And then the training of the record keeping. So I have discovered in requesting reports, it is a wild variety of the way reports are submitted to me, or it was first term. With the communication back and forth with mentors and directors since first term, all but one have come to me securely for second term, and that was just an old habits die hard moment, but we'll get everybody trained. So just wanting to have the mentors at the district level understand the record keeping protocol and where to secure files and how to access them and what information to take with them and what not to take with them. And in that, like I said, making sure you're reporting, or excuse me, submitting all reports to me securely. So the next question we talked about was, how does your team identify students that need mentors? So our best practice recommendations would be at the YIC intake meetings. We know a few district directors as well as mentors attend those meetings, and that's where the mentors are assigned to the students. Next step would be your normal LEA process, so notifying them by email or a phone call. And then also Julia sends out quarterly DCFS reports, and a couple of our districts have discovered in second term there were students listed that they had not been seeing in first term, but they quickly got mentors assigned. And then the fourth would be established relationships with your local DCFS contact to provide you updates. I know I'll give a shout out to Granite. I know that Granite has a relationship with their DCFS area coordinator, and that they have a good relationship that provides the information and all of the YIC student information forms at registration. So beyond that, like I mentioned briefly, we want to make sure the mentors are collecting data appropriately. So one of the questions I asked was what tracking and monitoring forms are your districts using? And most programs are using the Excel templates that we updated over the summer and sent out. I think it was in October that they finally went out to the new to all the teams. And then some districts have Google Forms that they have created based off of those Excel templates. And a couple districts are still using the app, which are all approved sources. And that was the intent of the question, was to make sure that the mentors are collecting data in appropriate fashions. And then we were curious about the storage of the files, and the majority of them are stored physically with keys or secure electronic files. And actually I should say all, not the majority. And then archived, we weren't sure because we didn't ask that question. So we're hoping that you are using those secure measures when you're archiving these students' records or destroying them, whatever is appropriate. And we're with the mentors, how do the mentors get access to these files? Like I said, is this part of your district protocol training and just as a standard process to teach them where the files are and how to access them? And if it's not, we would encourage you to make that part of your standard process. And then again, just reminding everybody to make sure it's systematic and secure. I don't think this is a new conversation for most of us, but a good reminder that everything needs to be systematic and secure. We also ask what you guys are doing with them for professional development. And we've discovered most teams are doing professional development at their staff meetings or having specific trainings for the mentors. And it ranges from skills they can use with students to skills they can use for themselves to be better professionals. So as a best practice, we would want all of the mentors to participate in the webinars, hosting webinars at least once a month right now. And the invitation goes out to all mentors, all ETCAs, all the coordinators, basically all of the YIC staff involved with mentoring. And then we have additional folks who've asked to participate as well. So if your mentors are not participating in those monthly webinars, we would encourage you to have them watch the recordings at the very least, but live participation does allow them opportunity to ask questions, and some of the recordings have to be edited for sensitive material, so some of them are not complete recordings. And I would also invite you to share, if possible, professional learning with mentors statewide. You can send me an email to share out, or you can get to the mentor directory and share from your email if preferred. All right, and let's see. I do not, is Nicholas on here? I have two screens of people.
He asked to be let in a little while ago, and now but I think
Amanda, can you hear me?
I can. Hello, Mr. Schelleb.
Oh, good. So I'm audio only, but I'm just gonna offer a quick apology to everyone. And maybe a quick explanation. My wife is having rotator cuff surgery today, which is why I've complicated this meeting for all of my team here. So Amanda's going to share a video that I pre-recorded. I apologize so much for presenting in video format, but I will hopefully be available for questions after.
Thank you.
So Amanda, if you want to go start the video, that'll be awesome.
Absolutely.
Hi team. So if you're watching this, I want to start by apologizing for presenting via video. After a full year of quarantine, I decided that virtual presentations weren't bad enough. I had to take it to the next level. But I do want to talk to you today about some mentoring best practices. Now, things are changing with Check and Connect mentoring here in Utah. I'm sure you've noticed a little bit. We've, of course, hired Amanda as a program specialist for Check and Connect mentoring specifically, and she's doing a fantastic job. You know, if you haven't had a chance to check out the webinars that she's putting on, go to our website at schools.utah.gov and have a look. They're all available on there for you, your teachers, and your mentors to check out. Lots of good material there. We've increased training opportunities for new mentors this year. You may not have seen it as much because of the COVID effect, but there are more opportunities for training this year than there ever have been in the past, and that trend will continue. In fact, we're looking to hire or to train even more trainers across the state within the next year. And in addition to that, Check and Connect, the program itself is spreading as an intervention throughout Utah. It's been primarily a YIC program for quite a few years now, but other at-risk populations are really starting to look closely at this program and utilize it. We see a lot in gang prevention and other at-risk groups. So Check and Connect is growing. In fact, Julia and I have had an opportunity this year to virtually visit with quite a few mentors. And so we have some information that we want to share with you. And I want to talk to you for a couple minutes today about Check and Connect mentoring and caseload best practices. Now, to implement their program to Fidelity, Check and Connect National, they recommend that each full-time mentor work with a caseload of 30 to 50 students. And I think that's actually been recently changed. It used to just say 50 students. So 30 to 50 is new. But even with that, we know that Check and Connect was not necessarily designed for the way that we implement it here with our YIC students. In fact, it was designed to be implemented in like a single school setting, right, where one mentor served all students in that school as a dropout prevention program or a student engagement program, right? And we obviously don't usually work within a single school. And in fact, on top of that, we're working with a very specific population of students, a very high risk population of students with our mentoring. Therefore, the 50-to-1 ratio definitely doesn't work for us. And we've talked in the past and recommended a 30-to-1 ratio as the base ratio for YIC Check and Connect mentors. And that's what I'd like to talk about today, whether or not that ratio is sufficient. So we're talking 30 students for every one full-time Check and Connect mentor. So like I said, over this last year, we've talked with a lot of mentors, but we've also collected a lot more data here at the state level. Specifically, we looked most recently at caseload levels, like how many students each mentor was working with. And in order to understand this in a consistent way, we developed what I've called a fidelity measure. And I'm sure Gerald is going to shake his head at my math here. Remember, I'm an English teacher. But we developed this fidelity measure by saying that we use this formula. You take the mentor's weekly hours, however many hours they're scheduled to work each week, divided by 40, and that equals X, which is the fidelity measure, over 30, right? If we solve for X, we get basically what is the equivalent, how many students that mentor would serve if they were working 40 hours a week, right? So we put all the mentors on an equal playing field so we can really look and understand and compare their caseloads. Now, the average caseload for mentors, for YIC mentors across Utah was 26, which actually sounds really good to me. You know, in our discussions with mentors, that came out to be pretty close to the ideal caseload level for a mentor, right? Somewhere between 25 and 28 was what we found they expressed as the ideal caseload. But I still have a few concerns. The standard deviation Now here's me really trying to rub some of the dust off my old high school math skills. But standard deviation is 12.2. And what that means is that 2/3 of our mentors are working with the equivalent, the full-time equivalent of somewhere between 18 and 38 students. So my concern grows a little bit there. 18 on the low end and 38 on the high end, that definitely seems high to me. But when we look at caseloads, there's a lot of other considerations that we have to make to determine if that caseload is ideal. Now, the first thing to consider is the age of the students. In our discussions with mentors, we discovered something that's pretty obvious, that serving or working with elementary age students as a mentor is very different than working with high school age students. And oftentimes we found that mentors were spending less time with their elementary age students than with high school students. And I'm sure there's lots of good reasons for this, but the reality is we have to consider if we have a mentor who's serving a specific age of students, that caseload for that mentor might be different than another mentor who's serving a different age group of students. Of course, we need to look at the number of schools that a mentor has to attend to. If they're going to multiple schools, that's obviously going to take time in their schedule to get to those schools. Now, I talked to one mentor, and I think she was covering 5 schools, and I kind of said to that mentor, like, wow, so you must spend a good portion of your day driving. And she looked at me like kind of confused and said, no, I go to the school in the morning and I work with all the kids at that school, and then I go home. And the next day I go to another school. So pretty obvious. So yeah, there's some caveats and some other considerations, but the more schools that a mentor has to go to, that probably the smaller their caseload is going to be able to be. And same thing with distance between schools. We have some areas where every school in the district is 10 minutes within a 10-minute drive. And in Emory, for example, I know that it's a good distance from the district offices and the high school there to like the Green River High School. It could be hours spent in a car each day. So we make those considerations of caseload, taking into account distance between schools. We also should consider a mentor's individual capacity, right? I think it's fair to say that a mentor with years of experience might be more able to serve students in a similar way, more students than a beginning mentor. But the opposite might be true as well. Like a mentor with lots of experience might actually be spending more time with individual students or in connecting that student to services. So case-by-case basis, what is that mentor's capacity and what is the effect on that mentor's ability to carry a certain caseload? And of course, we have your individual expectations of the mentor, right? Are we talking about you want your mentors to stop and check the grades of a student and then, that's it? Hopefully not. Hopefully there's more to it than that. Or are your expectations pretty broad? Are we looking at home visits? And I know we have actually some mentors who attend court cases. Are we attending multiple meetings for individual students? Are we really expanding the role of a mentor? And if that's the case, then that has to be taken into consideration in developing a caseload for each mentor. And then the final caseload consideration is target population. Who is the mentor working with, and what are the implications of that? Do we have a mentor who's working specifically with foster care youth, as has been the case in the past? Or are we looking at changing the scope of mentoring services for certain mentors, right? For example, in Granite School District right now, we have a mentor who works specifically with students in the day skills intervention group, right? And the question is, do those kids take the same amount of time? Is it the same effort level, the same capacity for a mentor, or is there a difference? And are we considering that difference? All right, I'd like to talk now about expanding Check and Connect services. Now, historically, our Check and Connect services have been intended for students who are in foster care, right? That was our primary population as we adopted this program, and as we've expanded over the years, those are the kids who we really sought to provide services for. Well, with juvenile justice reform, the landscape is changing, right? And some of you have already changed a little bit the students who you are serving with Check and Connect services. I know that across the state there are some systems of care students being served with Check and Connect mentors. I know that we have, like I said earlier, some day skills intervention kids who are being connected to mentors. That there are other youth services students who are receiving mentoring services, and this is wonderful. Our code says that youth in custody funds can be used for students who are in custody of or receiving services from Department of Human Services. So in response to juvenile justice reform and the youth services model that JJS is adopting, we too need to adjust and adapt to the students who need these services. Specifically, this year we're going to be talking about serving kids who are in day skills intervention, right? And not just while they're in the DSI program, but as they transition out to schools, continuing to serve those kids with mentoring services. The same is true with kids who are in detention. And this is both home detention and locked detention, right? Home detention is a population who we are not really serving at all right now, who are a very high risk population, of course. And some of these kids are having contact with schools that they haven't had for a long time. So this is a great opportunity for us to jump in and connect them with Check and Connect mentors. And then as we look at the youth services model, we've identified students who are under a youth services family first plan. We'll have more information on that later, but these are students who have kind of gone deep into the youth services system, and we think they've reached a point where we can say they would benefit definitely and be clearly identified as YIC students who we can also connect with a Check and Connect mentor. Now, there may also be other students that we discover along the way that are appropriate for YIC mentoring services, and we can look to expand and grow as the years move on. So hopefully now your wheels are spinning on what other students you can serve with Check and Connect mentoring services. And if you're anything like me, you start keying in on the trouble spots, right? I don't know why, but I always see the problems first. And there's some obvious problems, right? Like, how do we identify these students that may be eligible for services? How do we document them? What is it we put in our SIS to say that, hey, this is a YIC student receiving YIC services, so I need money for that student, right? Which brings us to the third big problem. How do we fund increasing Check and Connect mentoring services? Well, as far as funding, I'll talk about that later in this meeting today. When we talk about financials, we'll go over that and hopefully give you some ideas. And identifying and documenting, we're actually not going to talk about that much today. It's work in progress. We are working directly with JJS to put in some procedures and protocols for identifying these students and to share that identification immediately with you as LEAs. And then we'll talk about, with some technical assistance, how to identify them in your SIS to make sure that they're counted as part of your YIC population. What I really want to happen today as part of this discussion is for you to start thinking about, as you look at your structure for the next year, what does your YIC mentoring look like and what role can it serve, right? And as we develop those ideas, then we can start talking about the costs and the very specific procedures to make this happen. But as we look at creating a great strategic plan for serving these students, I want you to know that expansion is possible, that better services through Check and Connect mentoring are definitely possible. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm sure Julia and Amanda will be happy to field a couple questions if you have anything. Other than that, it's nice talking with you guys. Thanks for being here today, and thanks for all your work. We'll see you soon.
Do we have any questions, or are we ready to move on? And Julia, are we okay on time?
It looks like we are still just about 4 minutes over, but if there's any quick questions now, we can answer those before.
Hey, Amanda.
Yes, Heidi.
There was one quick question that was emailed to me. They want to know if they can get a copy of the PowerPoint after the meeting.
Yes. We'll send that out with a follow-up email, Julia.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, I have the screen sharing capabilities, Mr. Mazzaros. Are you and Evian ready to go?
Okay, we are. I'm just going to do a quick introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to Evian. I think it would be better for staff to hear those who are in this participation or participating in this. It'd be better for you to hear from someone who's on the grassroots level doing the work, rather than from a state level individual who observes the work. Not that I don't know what's going on, but it's always better for, in my opinion, for someone who's doing the work to share that type of information. As you know, we're talking about strategic planning and so forth. For this to work well, I think it's going to be important for you to understand what ETCA is, Education Transition Career Advocates, and where they fit into the sequence of activities that go on in terms of servicing youth. And again, the primary target of ETCAs are secure care sites, which I know that doesn't impact everybody here. Some RTCs, residential treatment centers, and DSI and ALTA. And so if we get to some other, if we have enough time at the end, which looking like right now, in order to get back on schedule, we may not, but we have some other exciting things that are developing. And Evian, if you could also take a moment and talk about the recent development of how we're being able to share with case managers and so forth the names and the individuals we're working with, and how we're developing a larger and more timely communication with regards to information flowing back and forth between JJS and us. Okay, Evian, I turn it over to you. And by the way, for those of you who don't know Evian, Evian is our statewide trainer for ETCAs. We don't have a large number of ETCAs, 6 or 7 depending on the day or the week or the month. And we don't have a need for ongoing training like you do with a Check and Connect, but anytime a new person comes on board, I send in our professional ETCA, Evian, to train them, and she helps them to quickly climb the learning curve. And so Evian's at Slate Canyon, and Evian, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Murray. It's always an honor for me to be able to share the work that we do. I feel like the ETCAs really have the best interest of the youth at heart, and they really jump in with their whole heart and soul, because they recognize oftentimes this is the place where the youth struggle the most. When we get them in our facilities and we have them with us, they do okay in school, but then when we send them back out on their own, it kind of becomes that point where flying isn't so easy. And if ETCAs can help them along so they're ready to jump off with some plans, we really embrace that opportunity. So I chose the background of this slide specifically because as ETCAs, we really see ourselves as those links that connect all these different entities that work with the youth, JJS, education, the specific facilities, as well as the case managers and those that are involved with them, and the community. We really see ourselves as kind of that link that connects us all together. Amanda, would you click for me? Thank you. And then really, I think we see ourselves as the opportunity that helps those kids see the greener pastures, the next step being better than where they've been, and even the future they thought that they could have. These are the list of current places that we have ETCAs. We have them up in Cash and Box Elder with the residential treatment centers. She's fairly new, but she's a counselor by trade. And so she was able to really kind of step in and get going pretty quickly because she had a lot of the background understanding of what we do. We have secure care up in Weber with Mill Creek Youth Center. We have secure care and RTCs covered in Davis. Our secure care, so that would be Farmington Bay as the secure care. And then I have listed there the residential treatment centers as well. And then Decker Lake in Salt Lake, Slate Canyon is the one that I specifically cover. Also reaching to JJS's transition service of Alta in Springville. But I generally have worked with them. And so I just continue to follow up a little bit there. I don't do anything like specifically just for them. And then RTCs in the Sanpete area, and then our secure care facility down in Southwest. So we're smattered kind of across the state, and all of us willing to reach out and do what we can do to help the youth and to help them move forward. Next slide, please. So really, I just wanted to give you an overview kind of the basics that ETCAs do. Some of you are a little bit familiar with this or have a good understanding, and some of you don't have any idea what we do. Specifically, with all secure care, we are able to go to their staffings every week. And so we really become a member of the team, the treatment team that's there for each of those youth. We know their plan, we know where they're headed, we know the struggles that they've had coming in. We recognize where they are educationally, and then that's really where we put the front end of our work, is in their education plan while they're with us. And we work super hard in our facilities, specifically to help them with credit recovery. We want to get them as caught up as we possibly can, so that when they go back out to the mainstream schools that they land in, they have a fighting chance. They don't go out so far behind that they know there's no chance that they can ever catch up. And so we really do work to help them get as much credit recovery as we can. We're able to attend all of their hearings and be an advocate for them to speak to the changes that they're making and the progress that they have, the goals that they have in place, and the things that we've set for them. We do lots and lots of work with their career pathway. So we do some basic assessments. One that we've just started that has been super fun to watch the youth respond to. We've started doing a character strengths assessment, which helps them understand their top 5 character strengths, just that innate personality, who they are, what they're naturally good at. And then that really kind of leads the rest of the discussions that we have with them. We talk about their ability to then now kind of start a personal brand, that they can leave behind all the things that they've done in the past, knowing what they're good at and what their strengths are and who they want to be going forward. And we really have lots of conversations and talk about ways they can kind of build that brand for themselves. We do the Holland's Code career assessment and the career clusters, and then we really dig into some career investigation that they lead. They're able to really look at career options. We have a new platform that we're really, really excited to start using that will allow them to do a little more deep diving into each of those careers, so that when they are ready to leave and they have a career plan in place, they're excited about it. It's not just, okay, I've checked all the boxes and I've done what I'm supposed to do here, but like, this is going to be my future and I'm the one that's chosen it, and I have a good understanding of what it means and what it will take to be successful. And they're really ready to jump off with that. And so we're really excited about being able to bring all those things we've always done together on a platform that they'll be able to navigate a little bit easier. We assist with any career skills certifications like food handlers and OSHA, first aid and CPR. We have a defensive driving course that they do, so that when they leave, they really are able to tackle and have those certificates to offer to an employer, to say, this is what I have that I've gotten in place so that I'm ready to jump into the job market. We help them create a master job application and a resume so that they have those ready to go. We put a portfolio together so that they have all of those documents in place. And we have had a number of students, it's been really gratifying. We've had a number of students that have gone to pick up a job application and taken that portfolio with them. And simply because they have it and they can flip to their master job or to their resume and say, these are my skills. We've had a number of students hired on the spot that instead of saying, okay, fill out the application and then come back in a week for an interview, like they're just like, okay, can you start next Wednesday? And so that's been really, I think, building for them to recognize they have things to offer and that an employer is interested in them as well. We coordinate all of the work that we've done with the Check and Connect mentors that are receiving the youth, as well as with their case managers. And if they're being placed in a specific program, we also coordinate all of that information there. And then we do track the youth for 90 days post-release to just know what things have happened, all the things that we got in place. Were they able to follow through with that? Are they employed? Have they been attending school? How is the Check and Connect mentor doing? Have they, made contact, and are they moving forward that way? So that's just kind of an overview of the things that we do and that we can offer those youth at each of the facilities. Next slide. So just one last thought. Murray was specific that this is about strategic planning and how we can better help you, and some things that possibly you could do that would help us. And I just think the most important thing just is that communication and being constantly able to reach out to each other and make sure we're sharing that information. Specifically, again, we're in contact with the Check and Connect mentors that receive these students, and they coordinate back with us the things that they're accomplishing. One thought we did have, if there's a possibility for this, I don't even know, thought this would be a good place to throw it out. One thing that would be really helpful to us, Amanda, if you would click again, is if we could possibly create a master list of the registrars and their contact numbers. We have the master list of youth in custody directors, but we don't have a list of the registrars. And oftentimes that's kind of where the hang up is in getting transcripts, knowing who to contact to get those. Anyway, just throw that out as a possibility for something that would be helpful to us. And then just offer, if there's anything that we could do that would be helpful to you, we would love to have a discussion about that and be able to fill any voids that you have or anything that we could offer. So we really appreciate you giving us time to be able to come and present today, and I'll open it up for any questions. I think Murray will jump on as well to help answer those, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Evian. Jason, would you take a look at the chat box? Carol Anderson has a question there for you. The answer right now, Carol, is that we don't have an ETCA in Granite School District area. There was a change in staff, so we're in the process of, or Jason's in the process, Jason Roswell is in the process of hiring a new person there. If that's what your question was, you were directing it at.
No.
Yeah, I was just kind of probably directing it to, this is completely new to me. And so I was just kind of asking who was be the person in Salt Lake County, because we have not had contact with an ETCA.
Jason?
Yeah, so we have hired, we've extended a recommendation for hires, technically the language we're supposed to use, and they're going through their background and pre-employment stuff. We're expecting it. This was completed last week. We actually were rolling out a whole new platform that our district's requiring us to use. So it's a little time consuming to get into that. But we expect hopefully by the next week at the latest that we'll have someone in place and would be able to reach out to you. I don't want to give you her name yet until she's cleared.
Great, thank you for that, Jason.
So Carol,
You're welcome.
I think this is coming back now to Amanda. Amanda, you still have all the current listings of the ETCAs on your Check and Connect website, correct?
So it's actually on the YIC website, but yes.
Pardon me. That's, yeah,
It's
that's what I
one
meant.
tab over, so it's not that far away, but yes,
Yeah.
we
So,
have the list.
yeah, so if any of you are ever looking for that ETCA list, we don't have a specific location on the website, our State Board of Education website for ETCAs, because it's only one, it's only one smidgen. I guess I should turn my face on again. It's only one smidgen of things that we have. So we just let Amanda house that on the youth in custody site. The other thing that I want to share with you, and this we're 2 minutes over, so I'm going to end with this unless you have some other questions, is that we're always open for ideas. So please understand that we believe in Kaizen, continuous quality improvement. So please feel free to suggest anything to us. We take all suggestions as a good suggestion. One of the more exciting things that's coming up, we've had 3 or 4 awesome things happening already in the school year. We've made quantum leaps. This has been a banner year. But the next one that's coming up is as big as anything else that's happening, and that is that we're working with a private provider at no cost to the state to provide us statewide coverage of getting kids employed who are leaving state custodial situations. And that's not going to be, it's not going to cover all areas yet, but that may in the future. I see the possibility of that expanding towards all areas where kids are in state custodial or in state care. it has huge potential opportunities. In fact, right now, this particular company, the private provider, is serving roughly 15% of the kids that they're serving right now are coming from DCFS, 5% from DJJS, and the rest are coming from existing high schools. But as we send them names and so forth, we could quite easily see this jump significantly to providing employment opportunities for all youth who are in state care, including potential DCFS kids. This private provider is willing to expand as necessary. And there are other providers in the state that we're going to be looking at, or I will be looking at in the future. And hopefully we'll be able to make this a huge thing in the state and become a national model. In fact, in some ways, not that I want that to be the case, but if it turns out that way, bully for us. But it's really one of the more exciting things I've seen in the last 2 or 3 months. And it's hopefully going to be a blossoming, I mean, it has all opportunities to become exactly what I just said, a huge blossoming service to all students who are in state care, to give them some form of employment. I'm done. Evian, anything else? Sorry for talking at auctioneer's pace. I know we got to get going, so it's 4 minutes behind. So back to you, Amanda.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Trina Valdez here, State Education Liaison. I was asked to talk a little bit about local interagency councils that matter, but I sort of wanted to frame it first in the idea of coordinated efforts really help our youth be successful, and that fragmented services can be an issue. So as many of us know, millions of students experience educational disruptions in the US each year. The State Board of Education Youth and Care Program oversees education for students in custody. And we are really, really committed to improving coordination across districts to ensure enrolled students are consistently prepared to embark on life trajectories. As we know, again, the access to services needed to overcome disruptions often must navigate multiple fragmented systems of care. Students may face various life challenges: foster care, earlier unplanned pregnancy, homelessness, incarceration. So really, our support agencies help youth overcome disruptions. These can be nonprofits, teachers, schools, volunteers, Check and Connect mentors, etc. So these unaddressed services, again, lead to things like lost income, increased percentage of adult incarceration, etc. So how do we define the problem of fragmentation? It's a statewide responsibility. Local LEA school services, we have to look at multiple moves, gaps in learning, transfer of records, which has come up a couple of times this morning, and really looking at how interagency collaboration and multi-agencies involved can sort of help prevent fragmentation. So the Utah Coordinating Council for Youth in Custody is an advisory board appointed by the State Board of Education. We are asked to focus on the planning, coordination. We recommend budget, policy, and program guidelines. And you will see here that we actually fall under, we're required to have this Utah Coordinating Council for Youth in Custody. So UCC YIC is made up of sort of executive level folks from each of the agencies that we interact with, including DSAMA, which is Substance Abuse and Mental Health, the Division for Services for People with Disabilities, System of Care, the Juvenile Courts, JJS, DCFS. We have tribal representation. We have a superintendent from a rural district, and we meet every other month to really discuss how to improve programming and the success for youth in custody kids. So here's just a quick overview of who sits on that council by agency. And at the end, I will show you where you can find all of these documents as well. So this is where it really gets down to the district level advisory councils. So each LEA serving youth in custody shall establish a local interagency advisory council, which is responsible for advising member agencies. Here it has listed representation from DCFS, JJS, directors of agencies located in an LA as detention center, secure lockup facilities, etc. So I attend as many advisory councils as I can, but for today I've asked 2 specific districts to sort of talk about how they function. There's no right or wrong way to run a local interagency council, although it is required. The folks that you invite to your meetings is really dependent on your unique situations. For instance, Canyons does a really good job about talking about individual students and sort of staffing cases and coming in and saying, we have the student that needs this, this, and this support. Cash and Logan combine theirs together. They have a really robust group where they have folks from their residential treatment centers attend. They have Check and Connect. They have Voc Rehab, Department of Workforce Services, Adult Education, SRO, and even the County Sheriff's Office participates. So after I show you the next slide, there, our webpage, I will ask Sherry Hansen and Colleen Smith, maybe Sherry can go first, just to talk a little bit about the makeup of their councils, how often they meet, who attends, and really the benefit and success they've seen out of those collaborative meetings. So here is our Educating Youth in State Care webpage. It has a lot of really great resources. Let's see, let me open it. So we just put out our 2020 guidebook, which can be found here. So you can just click here. Also, if you go to local contacts, you can find our youth in custody, all of your information here, our Check and Connect, and then also, in addition to the link to the ETCAs on the YIC, you can also get to the ETCA contact list here as well. And we also have this interactive map by district where you can click on and see who your contacts are for DCFS, JJS, and then your information will be on there as well. So I think I'll leave questions to the end. If Sherry wants to jump in, I can stop sharing.
Trina, am I on?
You are, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. I don't know how to add to what you said. You kind of covered what I was going to say. We do meet with Logan School District as well. And ours is not as much individual student discussion as it is getting to know all the players. Every now and then we will run through the names of kids that might have been in detention because we have that facility there. But probably the biggest advantage for me in meeting with all those players is I know who to call when something comes up, and I have that relationship with them. You know, as we know in our business, relationships are the key. And just an idea of who sits on that meeting, we meet quarterly and 4 times during the school year then. And Cache School District, Logan School District, JJS, DCFS, DWS, Voc Rehab. We invite USBE, often Trina or Julia or Nick. Adult Education, because we run that for the Valley. The SRO, Cache County Sheriff's Office and Logan City Sheriff sit on that. And I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Do you want to jump in, Colleen? I appreciate you joining us for this portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I agree. You did a great job kind of summarizing what we do. We initially we started off with a pretty new team, like myself included a few years ago. So we started with everybody just kind of talking about the supports and services that could be provided. And once we got, it was last year that we switched up to where we recognized that a lot of our students were involved with multiple agencies, and a lot of times it was the family was involved with lots of agencies. So we began talking about individual students. We don't usually use the student names in that meeting unless there's a reason to do that. Otherwise, we primarily discuss like what kind of supports would be appropriate for this type of situation. But yeah, same group of people that you guys have already mentioned attend, and we have quarterly meetings as well. So
great, thank you. Do any of the other districts, youth and custody directors, want to chime in on how their local interagency councils have worked, or if there's something unique that you want to highlight to kind of give us just an example of, you know, why these meetings can be so important, that hopefully they're not just another meeting. I know some of you attend system of care meetings as a youth and custody interagency council meeting. So like I said, there's not one right way to do it. But we just want to make sure that you're collaborating with all of the players that are important, and that you have those relationships and contacts, and you can easily access the people that you need. Does anybody want to chime in and give us an example of how your council runs?
I can say a little bit about what we do. Has pieces of things that we've heard already. Maybe the other thing I'd add, unless it was said and I just missed it, was that sometimes we'll have representatives come in and provide some quick training, 5-10 minutes on a particular area topic that might be beneficial. Found that some of our facility partners maybe are a little weaker in their understanding of special ed. So I've invited someone from our district to come in and kind of explain some of the challenges that they face and that they bring to our attention. So that might be an example. Just, it doesn't command a lot of the time. It's a focus, but it's also just kind of an educational part to providing some support for our agency partners.
Great example. Yes. Thank you. Anybody else?
I get a few minutes. Oh, thank you. To talk about professional learning. And again, this is an opportunity. I didn't think that it was fair for me to talk so much at you, and I wanted to hear more from you. And I think we learned some lessons from last time that we need a little bit more time. So I'm going to say fewer words this go around, but I wanted you to know that as Nick and I have been going around and doing some reviews, for some reason I can't see your faces. There. As Nick and I have been doing reviews, we've been talking to mentors and teachers and you, and learning some really great things. And one of the common trends that we've seen in the last little while is that professional learning for our youth and custody staff is a little bit, I don't want to say sparse, because what we're hearing is that teachers are going to staff meetings, they're going to faculty trainings, but they're not always feeling like it's relevant to them, because as you know, our teachers are a unique population. They're serving a unique population. And so for some of these LEAs, it's going well, and for others, it's not going so well. But our teachers are telling us that, that there's a lot of great efforts being made, but again, it feels like maybe a waste of time when they're going to these. And some it's working, especially for our larger LEAs that have lots of teachers in the same boat. It seems to be a little bit more effective than some of our smaller LEAs where it's one teacher isolated at a group home in the middle of nowhere. And so we wanted to hear from you again, and we're going to split into groups, and there'll be different groups this time. But we wanted to have you meet in small groups and have the same kind of conversation about two questions that I have here. One is, what are some of the most successful professional learning opportunities that you have seen for your youth and custody staff or for others? And do you have any other ideas, new ideas of professional learning, or things that you have thought about doing but haven't been able to? And so we'll split into groups again, Amanda, whenever you're ready, and come back and chat about that again. I hope we didn't cut anybody off mid-sentence, but welcome back. All right, I hope that was a good opportunity for everyone to get together, maybe meet a few new folks or just connect. I will just start this conversation. We'll do it similar to how we did earlier. I'd love to hear from, I didn't ask you to find a spokesperson, but I know you're all leaders in this group, and so you'll step up to the plate and lead if you need to. But I'd like to hear a little bit from you. Let's start with what professional learning successes have you seen with your youth in custody staff and faculty? What's worked really well? And then once we talk about a few of those, let's talk about some of your new ideas. So one thing I just wanted to say as we get started, our Amanda, as you heard before, has been hosting webinars for the Check and Connect mentors, but we've actually had a couple of teachers join those webinars. And the feedback that we've gotten, at least from the one teacher, is that it has been really helpful for them to participate in that, and that they learned a lot and they could apply it to what they were doing as well. Even though those Check and Connect webinars are geared toward, you know, those that are presenting are informed that these are mentors, this is what they do, and so they've geared their presentations to those staff. I think it can apply across the board. So if that's something that you're open to having your staff participate in, they're welcome to go and see if any of those would be helpful for them. So let's hear from you. Let's start with some of those professional learning successes. Anybody want to share an experience or something that was shared in your group?
This is Carol. I'll go ahead and share some of our successes. I think this year it was having Glenn Dyke come. He's a BCBA, and he trained on doing functional behavioral assessments and behavior intervention plans and data collection, not just with my YIC staff, but also I'm over at the school social workers and school sites. So we just put all those groups together and had going through that training. Last year, it was really helpful. Jason Burrow-Sanchez from the University of Utah came and did the ADAPT curriculum, Advanced Decision Making for Teens.
Real quick, Carol, could you sit a little closer to you? I'm having a hard time hearing.
Okay, sorry. Then we had Jason Burrow-Sanchez come from the University of Utah. And he did the ADAPT curriculum, Advanced Decision Making for Teens. And then we had Leanne Hawkins from the University of Utah, and she did the Behavior Education Program, Check In, Check Out. So just another one that we could use to help support. And then last year, as part of our COVID lockdown, I ran virtual book study groups, and Dr. Bill Jensen did the Tough Kid book as a 4-part book club study.
Oh. And I know you said one other, Glenn. What was
Glenn Dyke with functional behavioral assessments and behavior intervention plans.
Okay, I'm just summarizing here. Will you spell the last name for me? I'm sorry.
No problem. D-Y-K-E.
Okay. Okay. Well, there's some great ideas for you.
Oh, and I'm sorry. And then we are doing one more book study with Jason Burrow-Sanchez that starts on March 26th. It will be, the first one will be in person, and the next two will be virtually on why do they act that way. It's a book. So if people are interested in having staff join that, just go ahead. I'll type my email address into the chat box.
Awesome. Thanks, Carol. What else has worked for you folks?
I was telling my group, one of the things that we have a professional development incentive program in our school district, and it's an online program. We got the grant through the STEM Action Center. And one of the requirements of the grant is the teachers have to do 2 videos of themselves teaching, and they don't have to be long, and then they do a self-evaluation on
the skills. We have a little paper that goes with it that they can, things to watch for. They can even watch the students or they can watch themselves and learn from that. And then they choose three different things that they want to learn about throughout the year. And it has to be at least each level, it has to be worth 10 hours. A lot of times they use CUES courses, what we call it CUES at Central Education Center, but UEN courses. And what's really nice about that is that they're able to choose what they want and what they feel like they need. And the hope is as they watch these videos of themselves, they can see some of the areas that they need to work on. And so then it helps them select the areas that they want. And then we really missed the professional development that we got with our Promising Youth Conference. We were asking about that. Does anybody know anything of that future plans for that? I'm assuming not this year unless they do it virtual.
This is Carol. I'm on the committee. We might do a half-day virtual this year, but we're hoping to bring it back next year. So.
Oh, great. Carol, I can't hear you very well at all.
I'll try.
Okay.
I know. I was turning up my volume too, but good to hear from you, Carol.
And then the other thing I was sharing with our group is that I've sent my teachers the last 4 years to an art conference that they have at Hurricane High School. It's the Art Association, and my teachers love that conference. They've come back with some really neat ideas and the way they do. And it's usually on a Thursday, Friday, and part of Thursday, then Friday, Saturday.
Do you know if they're doing that this year?
I think they might be doing a virtual one. Virtual? I haven't heard. They got to go last year just before COVID hit, but then this year we haven't heard.
So that might be a good resource if it's available. So one that, while you're thinking, we work with, I don't know how many of you are familiar with CEEAS, which is now called Break Free. And they are getting ready to host a virtual conference as well that we are able to invite all teachers to. So we'll keep you posted on that as it comes up as well and as they create dates and things of that nature. Anything else? What other things have worked for you that would be worth sharing with this group?
Julia, there's a few things in the chat that people put in there.
Great.
There's one that says mental health first aid training.
Oh, I see.
I don't know if that would have anything to do with it. Motivational interviewing.
Great. Amanda, is there a way to capture this chat so that we can include it in here when we send out the PowerPoint?
Yes, I was actually just copying and pasting as you asked me.
Perfect. Then we'll include these things. Book club. That's fantastic. Okay. Awesome. All right. Since we just have a couple more minutes left, let's move to new ideas. Something that has come up in our reviews as far as new ideas go, especially in these smaller communities where there's one teacher at a group home and there's really not anybody else in their district that's doing that. We've talked about potentially doing shadowing, letting those teachers go and shadow another classroom if it's at all possible, if that could be arranged or something along those lines. I know obviously that there are challenges with travel and COVID and all of those things, but maybe down the road that could be an option. Is there anything that came up in your breakout groups that would be worth mentioning here today?
It might be helpful with the virtual options we have now and Carol's generous, offer. When you get someone really cool, like some of the contacts that Carol has, and they're going to do something like that, if they can either record it and send it out the way we're doing that, or kind of push some of those options through maybe you, Nick and Julia, and then make them available. So much of what we're doing these days is going to be customized for each individual teacher. We'll do some blanket stuff, but then we're going to set a couple days aside for them to kind of do a deep dive in what their needs are, whether it's technical needs or kind of just more general needs. And so that would be super helpful. I put the link into the Utah Criminal Justice Center, And they're doing some of this work now that's kind of very interesting for those that have facilities or working with JJS on a regular basis. So check that out and you get a feel kind of for what they're doing and how they're archiving it. Just a thought.
Thanks, Travis. And I think that's a great idea. So please, if you do have cool presentations like Carol has coming up and it's something that could be recorded and shared, we would be happy to help facilitate that across the board.
You know, Julia, one thing that we did, and I didn't bring it up in our breakout, but, you know, I've tried to encourage you, we try and do some tier 1 professional development, if you want to call it that, and then also allow for some of that differentiation that Travis spoke about. But so I have a person that I've kind of designated as a reading specialist and got him to a training and had him back and present that to staff so that we can increase internally. And obviously, if we do something like that, we could also be back on with other people that might be needing that. So.
Great. All right. Any other thoughts before we move on? I appreciate it. I hope that those of you that are struggling with the professional learning or professional development, whichever word you're using at this time, that if you're struggling with finding things that work for your staff in particular, that you'll reach out and utilize some of these things, or that you got some good ideas today. But I really like some of these ideas, and I like the idea of sharing what we're doing in our LEAs with others through recording. COVID has done some things that are good for us, and I think forcing us to use our technology is one of those positive things. So, Amanda, is Ashley here and ready to go? Have you heard or seen for her?
Yes, Miss Ashley is with us on the call, but I did fail to strategize with her. Ashley, I have your slides, or do you want to share from your screen?
It's the same presentation, so if you want to go ahead and pull those slides up, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Sure, give me just a minute to switch all my screens around. And oh, that was, are we seeing the PowerPoint? It might have been that simple.
Yes, absolutely. Looks great to me.
I'll be here on mute if you need me.
Okay, awesome. Hello, thank you for having me. Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Postello, and I am here with Safe UT. And Safe UT is a crisis chat and school safety tip line. It is an app that can be downloaded from both the Google Play and the App Store at no cost to the individual. A brief introduction of myself and my role at Safe UT. We'll talk about what Safe UT is and how it came about. We will scroll through some of the features of the app that is available to both students and educators and teachers and parents. We'll discuss the Safe UT workflow, and then there will be some time at the end for any questions that you might have. Again, first off, my name is Ashley Postello, and I am the project administrator for Safe UT, but my role is a bit different because I am also a liaison with the Utah State Board of Education. So I do work with both agencies. I have teammates in leadership at both agencies, and my primary role is to oversee the Safe UT Super User Grant Program that this past school year, it was the first year for, but I am also the K through 12 point of contact for everybody throughout the state. And if you have any questions or anything that pops up throughout the presentation, go ahead, feel free to ask them, but there's also my email address and my work phone number as well. So what is Safe UT? Maybe some of you heard of it, some of you haven't yet. It is a crisis chat and tip line, which does provide real-time crisis intervention to the user on the other end, and that is through a different options here. We have a live chat, so you can text back and forth, or you can call in and have a conversation over the phone back and forth. And we also have a confidential tip program as well to promote school safety and student safety. And all of this is available from the smartphone in the app, but also if an individual does not have access to a device, the chat feature and the tip feature are also live on our webpage as well. So who is on the other end of these chats and these calls and these tips? It's actually master's level clinicians that are hired through the University of Utah and HMHI, which is the Huntsman Mental Health Institute, formerly known as UNI. So UNI has changed its name recently to HMHI, and all of these clinicians are working for HMHI. We answer the Safe UT chats, we answer the phone calls, we answer the tips 24/7, 365, anytime throughout the day, throughout the year. And they are there to help with anxiety, depression, bullying, relationship issues, mental health or suicide related challenges, and much more. We're also there to provide resources and to just be there to help you navigate your feelings or your anxiety or anything as such. So once the app is downloaded, this is what the home screen will look like. And here are a few different features. We can start a chat, we can start a call, we can submit a tip, and then that bottom right-hand corner is view existing. And that is protected by a passcode that you create when you originally download the app. And that way, any chats that you have, they will be saved within that database, and any tips that you may submit, they will be saved in that database, so you can go back and look at them as well. And then, like I said, if you don't have a device, all app functions are available on our website, safeut.med. So once you originally download the app, it will ask you to select your current status. So how Safe UT works is that, like I said, it's available at no cost to anyone throughout the state as long as their school is enrolled. Good news though, we are in 100% of high schools throughout the state, 100% of middle schools, and roughly about 85% of elementary schools, but we're still getting constant questions on how to enroll and request to enroll new elementary schools as well. So as long as a school is enrolled, their students, their educators, the rest of their faculty and staff, and their parents have access to Safe UT, again, at no cost. So once you download the app, it will ask you your status. So are you a primary education student? Are you a higher education student? Or are you a parent or guardian or educator of a school? And if it does ask, your school if you do click one of the student buttons. So it will ask you to select your school. But if you choose the parent, guardian, or educator button, it will not ask you to choose what school you are affiliated with. So back to the home screen. Go ahead and click start a chat. And as soon as you hit start a chat, that screen on the right will show up reminding you if it's an emergency, please call 911. But then it's just texting. It's as easy as texting back and forth. After the individual texts that first message, they will get an automated response. Thank you for reaching out to us. We'll be right with you. And our clinicians are averaging a response time, an initial response time of 30 to 45 seconds. So within 30 to 45 seconds, you can be connected to a master's level clinician at your fingertips. And then again, back and forth, it's as simple as texting. So here is a Safe UT chat success story. A student, and we have permission to share all of these stories. A student took a cocktail of medications as a suicide attempt before school. They actually went to school, and that morning they had an assembly on Safe UT and was reminded of it. And she sent in a chat and asked for help. She wasn't feeling very well. She provided enough information to the Safe UT clinician to get her help and get EMS out to the school. They pulled her out of class. Unfortunately, she collapsed in the hallway. She was in the ICU for 5 days, but she survived because she reached out to us that morning and asked for help. So back to the home screen, you can also start a call. If you click the start a call button, the statewide crisis line number will be pre-populated on your phone screen. You simply hit call and you are instantaneously connected to a clinician. Again, here's another success story using the call feature. A student used Safe UT to call the crisis line as he was standing by the road thinking about immediately ending his life. So this was not in the middle of the night, but later in the evening. And Safe UT staff were able to contact the local police and the school, and they worked together to locate him and ensure his safety. This is the submit a tip feature. Again, this is all about student safety, school safety. Go ahead and click submit a tip. It will ask you an event category. You can see there it's alphabetized: abuse, alcohol, crime, dating violence, potential school threats, gun violence. And then the category other is also there as well if you feel like your category is not represented. So after the individual were to choose the category, we prompt, or the app prompts, excuse me, as much information as possible from the individual. What do you know? Who is involved? The date and the time of whatever you're submitting a tip about. What location do you know? Do you know it's at school? Do you know it's after school? Do you know it's at the park? Maybe a student knows that there's going to be a big fight after school. It's at this park at this time. And then what others know this knowledge? So possibly what others can we reach out to gain more knowledge about this? And then once a tip is submitted, it goes to our clinicians. Our clinicians will do an assessment of the risk of the tip. Doesn't need immediate attention, doesn't need just to be forwarded onto the school so they know about it. There is also an option for our clinician to start a chat with the tipster as well. Maybe if they have some questions about the information that was submitted, or if they're trying to dig a bit deeper to find some details about it. Attachments are also a part of the tip as well. So for example, if an individual saw a peer from school post on Snapchat that they are going to shoot up Spanish class tomorrow, and the Snapchat was all of the weapons that they have, they could screenshot that Snapchat. They could submit that tip to Safe UT, and you can select to attach an attachment, and they could send that picture over to our clinicians as well. And then our clinicians, again, will do that assessment, and they could either send it to the school ASAP, they could contact the school, they could call the school if it is an imminent risk tip or situation, but they could also just forward it on to the school so the school will receive it during the school day. Here's a success story of one of the tip features. So again, the tip is all about school safety and student safety as well. So if students know of a situation and they're worried about another student, they could also use the tip feature as well. So for example, here, a mother actually contacted us. Her student was struggling with mental health challenges and stated, "I thought he and I were in a good place. Without me knowing, he went on Instagram and posted 3 back-to-back messages stating he was going to kill himself. His friends saw the post and immediately sent the tips to Safe UT. Our clinicians contacted the police. We were able to get him immediate help. The mother said, "I'm amazed at the efficiency of Safe UT. From the initial post to the officer knocking on the door was less than 10 minutes. So that's how quick of a turnaround and an immediate impact these chats and these tips can have. So here is an infographic of how the Safe UT workflow is and how it works. So you see there 2 individuals, one calling, one texting. Maybe they're chatting in, maybe they're calling, maybe they're sending a tip. But they are contacting Safe UT. So once they start that line of communication, our clinicians are talking with them back and forth. They are either through chat or on a phone call, or they're reading that tip and doing that clinical assessment as well. So again, they are checking those check boxes of what do they know, what information do they know, and if they don't know some information, if they're trying to look a bit deeper into the students' own mental status and their own mental health at the time, they're asking questions. They're having that fluid conversation just like they've learned how to. And then based off of their clinical assessments, we will reach out to whoever we feel needs to be reached out to at that time. So some of our options are the school. The only thing we know about a student who is chatting in is what school they are affiliated with. Because once they hit, the student status, we ask them what school they attend, and that's the only thing we know about them. Everything is confidential. So unless they provide us more information about their name or how old they are or their gender, or they have Spanish third period or things as such, the only thing we know about them is their school. And that is because each school that is enrolled in Safe UT has a school profile, which includes Safe UT contacts. So if we feel the need to contact a school, we have a list of individuals. Sometimes it's counselors, sometimes it's principals, sometimes it's assistant principals, of who to contact to try to gain more information on the student in need. So we can contact the school. We can ask them to help us contact parents. That's an option as well. We have law enforcement if it's an imminent risk and we need some help right now and we need to send law enforcement over there. But we also have our MCOT team as well, and that is our mobile crisis outreach team. And that is basically a mental health 911. We are lucky because they are actually housed and stationed very close to our crisis workers as well. So we have really good connections with them to, if we need to send out a mobile crisis outreach team to help assess the situation at hand. So that is a brief overview of Safe UT and how individuals, like I said, students, faculty, parents, I have seen parents chat in about, asking ways to talk to their students about suicide or struggling with mental health, or how to even talk to them about the pandemic when COVID-19 hit us this time last year. So resources as well. And it is a really good resource for anybody who might be struggling just a little bit and might need just someone to talk to help navigate their feelings. But at this time, are there any questions from you guys that I can help clarify or answer for you?
I think we've caught him after lunch.
That's totally fine. And also, we have some Safe UT cards and posters, business cards and things as such, some materials just to help spread awareness of the app as well. And Amanda knows we are more than happy and welcome to send those materials out to you. And what I can do, we do have a Google form to fill out so we can keep track of all the inventory and send them out to you with an address and things as such. And just in a few minutes here, I can drop that link in the chat as well, in case you're interested in having some posters or cards delivered to you to have on hand.
Thank you, Ashley. That would be great.
Absolutely.
Ashley has already presented to the mentors. That was in February, I think it was, that Ashley came and presented on the webinar. So some of your mentors have already made requests, but I know Ashley will take all that come in. So
yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time this afternoon. And again, if you think of any other questions after this time, please feel free to go ahead and email me. And then again, like I said, I'll drop that resource link in the chat for you here in a few minutes. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. And I have her contact email and information if anybody needs it as well. So with that, oh, and there's the direct information for Safe UT's contacts.
All right, team, time for some funding updates. And again, if you're watching this video, I apologize. This was definitely not the original plan, but hopefully it works well. Remember, you can ask questions after the video, or feel free to shoot me an email if you need to. So starting with funding updates. So the first thing is the FY22 allocation. I'm sure you're all pretty aware that this legislative session was pretty favorable for education. We saw I think it was a 5.9% increase in the WPU. So that's a pretty substantial increase. Last year we had an allocation of $25,980,500. That was after all the mess that we went through with the special session. That's what we ended up with. This year's allocation is $27,821,200, which is a difference of almost $2 million, $1,840,700. So we saw actually a 7.1% increase in our funding for YIC education this year. That's the 5.9% WP increase plus a growth metric. The grant process for those funds, the good news is it's going to be pretty much the same as last year. The one big difference is there's going to be fewer formulas on the application. We tried to make it easy. We tried to make the application work a lot better for you last year by putting in these automatic formulas. And as many of you were aware, kind of caused a mess. They didn't work as well as we wanted to. So the good news is we've taken out a lot of those formulas. The bad news is that means that you're going to have to do a little bit of math on the application. It shouldn't be too hard, but if you have any questions or problems as you're going through it, feel free to reach out to us. The applications will be available at least by March 26th. And just a reminder, it will be a two-part application. We'll have part one, which is intended for all those students who are in residential settings. Our YIC law requires that we prioritize students not included in an LEA's average daily membership. So that's basically all of our full-time YIC students, primarily those kids that are in full-time residential care. The one really new thing this year is some specific exceptions to the 8-to-1 ratio. Now, we've always funded educators at a ratio of 8 students for every 1 educator. We're making some specific exceptions to that this year. And a lot of these exceptions have already been in place in the past. We're just making them official at this point. The first one is JJS facilities, and we're talking about those that are utilized at or near capacity. So if you have a facility that's very much underutilized, this may not apply. But JJS facilities, we are switching the ratio from the 8-to-1 ratio that we've used in the past to a 6-to-1 ratio, which will match the JJS staffing patterns and make it a little easier to match our services to their services. Another exception that we're making official, any RTCs licensed for 12 to 16 beds may have up to 2 full-time employees assigned to that RTC. In the past, it's been 8-to-1 ratio, so we had 2 for those 16 beds. But there are some 12-bed facilities out there, and we want to have 2 educators available to those facilities as well. RTCs that are frequently serving kids that range from 12 to 18, that cover that whole range, they may have up to 2 full-time educators plus 1 full-time paraeducator. We've had a few cases where we have to split those groups because the age range is so vast and we need 2 separate teachers in there plus a para. Okay, the Department of Human Services high-intensity units, these are found in a couple of our secure facilities. They may have up to 1 full-time educator and 1 full-time paraeducator, regardless of capacity. These are very small capacity units, but we still need a teacher and a paraprofessional in these units. And there may be some additional exceptions. And so if you have a situation where you think you need more than that 8-to-1 ratio of teacher to students, let us know, and any additional exceptions not explicitly listed here will have to be approved by our grant committee. So those are kind of the main points. The application, like I said, is going to be basically the same as last year with a few minor changes, primarily fewer formulas on the application and that change to the specific exceptions for the 8-to-1 ratio. Remember, we're going to have to prioritize students that are in residential settings, so we'll do part 1 of the application to get those numbers. Once those numbers are determined, then we will make part 2 available. Now, overall funding for part 2 of this year's YIC application, I'm estimating to be about a 10% increase overall from last year. Now, as we look at these percentage numbers here on this chart, this should give you an idea of what your funding in Part 2 should look like this year as opposed to last year. Now, these numbers are prior to that 10% increase, and they're based off of the overall percentage of statewide YIC students that you're serving, right? So Alpine, for example, this year didn't necessarily serve 91% of the total number of students that they served last year, but they served 91% of the overall statewide YIC students as compared to how many they served last year. So overall, it's actually pretty consistent within hopefully about 10% of last year's numbers. If you are in a district with a large change, for example, like Box Elder School District is only seeing 55% of what they saw last year. If you have questions on that, reach out to me. We can talk about what the reasoning is for it and how to make sure that your services for this next year are adequate to serve those students with whom you're working. All right, and last thing, I just wanted to review a couple dates really quick for the applications. Part 1, like I said, is going to be available March 26th. That's a week from Friday at the latest. A reminder that you don't have to have signatures on Part 1 until that final deadline day. Part 2 is going to be available, including the finalized numbers for your Part 2 funding, on April 23rd. And then the final deadline with all your signatures and all your plans and everything is due May 14th. Right? And like I said, if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to help walk you through any portion or all portions of the application if we need to. Let us know. Let us know if you have any questions. It's good to talk to you guys, and we'll see you soon.
Well, that's it as far as the PowerPoint goes, folks. There's the Jabberwocky in case you needed that in your life. I'll give it back to you, Miss Julia.
All right. Are there any questions specific right now related to funding that I could try to answer? Likely not, but we could always pass those questions on to Nick and provide those later. But if they are some pretty general questions, I'm happy to try to facilitate those, or I'm sure Nate and Amanda can help as well. And if there's no funding questions, I hope that was some positive news for the majority of you. And I'm just glad that we have some extra funding as we explore mentor expansion and all of those things. I think it will be helpful. But also we wanted to just have some time for open discussion. If there's anything additional that any of you have specific questions about, or you want to get a larger group's perspective on a certain topic, then we want to open the floor to have an open discussion. And there is no pressure, but we'd love to hear from you.
Is Nate still on? This will be a fun one for Nate.
Looks like she is.
Okay, lucky. And just because other districts are going to be dealing with this more, this really ebbs and flows, which is this DSPD relationship with juveniles. Traditionally, DSPD doesn't start serving juveniles, until they're well past legal juvenile status at 18 plus. But we're seeing more of that recently. And a lot of it could be a variety of mechanisms, but reform is probably one of those mechanisms. And so it's just important to note that when that happens, the student's not in custody, right? Guardianship and parental rights still, educational rights especially, still fall to the biological parent, or in many cases, the adoptive parent. Unfortunately, a lot of these students are post-adopt students. And so when they arrive into your respective LEAs, they look very much like a custody student, but they aren't in any way a custody student. And so it's going to be really important to negotiate with your special education team to make sure that you know next steps and don't kind of muddy the waters. One of the things that we're asking from DSPD is because they have to sign exemptions for these students even to be put into adult DSPD homes, that we get a simple response of a license, the licensed home and the licensed professional parent, right? So at the end of the day, we're not really questioning why the student arrived where they arrived. And believe it or not, we're already getting a little pushback from some DSPD providers on that they weren't readily available to produce a license either for their child placing foster function or for the home itself. So just know that if we're kind of trending back towards seeing more of that, that everyone should just kind of put that on their radar. It doesn't happen a lot, but if it's happening more, you're just going to kind of want to be aware of it, because it does look very different than what we would traditionally see with custody students.
Thanks, Travis. And I'm sure I didn't speak with you, but I did speak with your special ed director about some of this. And I think to your point, I mean, what I referred him to do to talk to you and to think about local interagency council is just maybe looking there for relationships and communication, because I don't know if he had a background with that. And so I said, if you're looking for a way to kind of build communication, that might be a venue. I don't know if DSPD is a part of those conversations or not really, because to your point, it's not really seen as youth in custody.
Right.
They're working with.
Exactly. And DSPD is not a mandated partner in statute and rule. And then the other tricky part is that so much of what DSPD is doing now is all outsourced. And so you're never really working directly with the state agencies the way we have the ability to with DCFS and JJS. You're working with generally a private for-profit entity that is questioning, like, what? Why do we have to do anything? You know what I mean? And so just know that it gets a little bit tricky, but the more we're consistent about what we're asking for, just the very basic elements of enrollment, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah. And I think some of it even goes to just determining residency and knowing if you have an obligation to enroll, because there seems to be confusion about that in the field. So I think that's where it can get muddy too, because when you're reading that statute, it is kind of talking about kids in the care or supervision or custody. And so I see your point that it gets kind of muddy. And I know some of my colleagues, even in the past week, I had to kind of be like, they're not receiving youth in custody services. And maybe you thought they were, but I also get your point about like pointing him toward the local interagency council maybe wasn't the right venue. So I guess a question from you all is like any brainstorming ways we can build relationships with contractors or anything at the agency levels between us and DHS that we could do to somehow promote communication, because I know that is one of the communicative frustrations is we're working with all these contractors and it's confusing and hard.
And I wasn't hoping for that, but now that you mentioned it, one thing that would be super helpful, especially with Laura Lee and some of the other contacts you have historically, is to see if you can get directly with DSPD and see if they'll, in the similar way that we get a DCFS roster or we get a JJS roster through Care and Safe, if DSPD is willing to identify the juveniles that they're currently serving. I mean, I guess if we really wanted to push it, you know, the students up to the age of 22 from a special ed standpoint, and they're where they're located. And obviously it's gonna take some negotiation and some massaging to get them there. But the idea would be, it would enable us to be more consistent in service provision and to also be prepared, right, structurally for this population. I don't think Schofield's on here because he's got more, he's just very important. He's got more important things to do, I'm sure. But obviously he's dealt with it, you know, the lion's share of it for a very long time in Iron County. But I'm starting to see more expansion because there's probably going to be a little bit more need with everything we just went through over the past year. So that would be incredibly helpful. I don't think that list, is more than 50 to 100 students statewide would be my guess. It would just be a really nice place to start if we can go that direction.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm going to ask a clarifying question. So, and maybe this needs to wait for Nick, but with COVID and stuff, okay, this year I saw numbers kind of go down. So does this year's numbers, are they the ones that base next year's budget, and will that be reduced next year, or are the numbers this year from this actual school year?
I think that the short answer is yes, that we have to go from this school year to the formula works to then create the percentage for next school year. But Nick is here, and so we'll let him continue.
Oh, cool.
Like magic. Yeah, so they're definitely based off of this year's numbers, but the numbers have decreased almost, well, proportionally across the whole state. And since our funding overall didn't decrease, it's based off of the portion of the YIC students that you're serving and not the overall number of YIC students who you are serving. So the actual funding, despite the overall decrease, shouldn't be impacted unless we've seen like movement of YIC populations from one district to another. And as far as I can tell, that's really only happened in areas where we've had residential treatment centers that have either opened or closed, and everything else has stayed pretty consistent.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, Nick.
Yeah.
Are we still looking at a balance between what our running numbers are versus our capacity in a similar respect? I mean, if we have capacity and at any time it can fluctuate high and low, and we got to kind of prepare for some of those moments versus kind of what's been taking place.
Yeah, the part one funding is still capacity based, so we'll still look at how many kids the facility can hold, either based on if it's a JJS facility, of course, whatever they tell us. If it's not a JJS facility, whatever licensing shows they're licensed to hold. And then it's that part two funding, the school-based funding, that's really dependent upon the actual numbers of students that you've served over the last year.
Thanks.
Now is as good a time as any just to kind of reassert the work that you're doing in this regard. And to Jason's point, I'm kind of a minimalist when I can be. And, as I whittle, kind of the services down in the facility down to the bare bones, you just start bumping up against kind of permutations that I can't control, right? So things were going great, and they just split a unit because we had 2 fights and sent 2 students to a hospital Monday morning that we didn't anticipate. So we're hoping to build in some of those pieces, whether it's with paraprofessionals or other mechanisms. But it's just helpful as we do this strategic approach with the contractor, the vendor, that they understand the dynamics of this. And I really like the parallel of special education. Even when you get down to, between 2 and 5 students in an ED, BD classroom, does that negate the role and function of the BD, ED classroom? And if it does, what next steps do we consider to provide wraparound supports for those students type of deal? So I'm hopeful that we get into that kind of nitty gritty when we do some strategic meetings, just to kind of get a feel for exactly what we're dealing with at the ground level. Not that districts can't be adaptive, right? But facilities aren't super adaptive, as you might imagine, right? Districts much more so.
Thank you. Anything else? Any additional questions, concerns that you want to bring to the table? I don't want to cut anybody off, but I also am okay to give you a half hour of your life back.
Julia, Gerald is raising his hand.
Oh, Gerald, I'm sorry. Oh no, I think he was probably saying goodbye.
Oh.
Aloha, right, Gerald? Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. And we'll be in touch. Please don't be strangers. Reach out if you need anything.